All Things Conceivable, a surrogacy podcast with Nazca Fontes.
Welcome, listeners, and thank you for joining me today on All Things Conceivable. You know, I am really loving this stage of the podcast life cycle where we are focusing on some amazing empowered women who are also empowering other women to live their best lives while driving change in their very own communities. Today's focus is on the NICU. And for those of you who don't know what a NICU is, it stands for Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, where our most vulnerable babies are cared for by incredible teams of nurses and doctors. We know that NICU nurses make a profound impact on the lives of critically ill infants and their families. Their expertise and compassion are vital in saving lives, with studies showing that NICU care significantly increases the survival rate of premature and critically ill infants. And today, I'm thrilled to introduce two of these amazing nurses, Tori Meskin and Tia Miller, co-founders of NICUity. Their platform empowers NICU nurses by providing essential resources, fostering education, and creating a collaborative community to support and uplift these professionals. What a power team. Welcome, Tori and Tia.
Thank you so much for having us.
This is going to be a great topic. And I have to tell you, in prep for this podcast, of course, I learned all things NICUity and had not only a lot of inspiring moments in doing so, but a lot of funny belly laughs too. So this is going to be a really fun podcast with the two of you today. But before we get going, I'd love for you to tell me and the rest of our listeners why you were both called to become nurses and the experience that you had along the way to where you are today. So, Tori, let's start with you. Why don't you share with us your background in neonatal and pediatric nursing and a little bit about, you know, yourself and your life outside of the NICU, but of course, what made you decide to dedicate your life to nursing?
Sure. Thank you so much for having us, first of all. Thank you, ladies. This is like such a, Tia and I like love running our company, but obviously like this is just so much fun for us. So thank you. So my background, I started neonatal nursing in 2013. Kind of a funny story. Getting into nursing school was one of the hardest journeys for me. But prior to getting into nursing school, I went to University of Arizona, bear down for all of my Wildcats out there. And prior to deciding to become a nurse, I was actually in the marketing business realm. And my dad took me to orientation for for school. And both of us fell asleep in the orientation for the business school. And my dad looked at me and he goes, "Is there anything else you want to do? Like, this isn't like seeming like it's going to resonate." And I looked at him and I said, I've always thought I wanted to go into nursing. And so that day we went over to the bursar's office and we switched to pre-nursing. And that's kind of what set me on my journey to become a nurse. In terms of babies and NICU, I started my career in a children's hospital in Southern California. And at the time I had applied to NICU. I was really my passion was really in either babies and or pediatrics. I knew I was not going to be an adult nurse like that. That was not for me. If, you had teeth and pubic hair, I did not want to deal with you. You were not for me. And so my decision was actually kind of out of strategy. I applied to the NICU where they were hiring more grads at that time. And it was that or going to be the cardiac intensive care unit, which is very similar to NICU. I ended up in the NICU, and that sort of started my journey into this crazy world. And then, 8 years later, Tia and I met, and then we created this beautiful NICUity baby together, and it's been an amazing journey. I'm just so thankful for it.
And, Tia, I know that you guys you mentioned that you met 8 years ago. So there's been, probably some significant change and movement and learnings along the way as the two of you endeavored to build your careers and then build this, I love this, the baby NICUity. And so Tia, tell us a little bit about how you came to enter into the world of nursing prior to meeting Tori.
Yeah, it's so funny because I also didn't start out initially on the nursing track. I always thought that I was going to go into journalism. So what happened for me, unfortunately, was had a big life event happen when I was a senior in high school, and that was the loss of my baby brother. And I was really influenced by the labor and delivery nurses that kind of took care of my family during that whole time. And I thought to myself, like, this is what I want to do, you know, like I want to be able to give back and be that person for other people who are going through similar situations as my family. So that really set me on the track to nursing. And I was really fully gung-ho on the labor and delivery nurse track right up until that moment in college when I actually had to do my labor and delivery clinical. And on the very first day of my clinical, there was a loss. And initially I was like, oh, this is what I'm here for. Like, this is what I was called to do. So let's go, let's do it. And then as I was going through the day, I felt so helpless the entire time. Like I was being that support person for that family, but in my heart, I just felt like there was more that I could do. And that's what really led me to NICU. I ended up having one clinical day in NICU where I wasn't even really allowed to do anything. I just kind of walked around and the nurse told me what she was doing. But apparently that's all it takes because from then on I was determined I was going to be a NICU nurse. And it wasn't easy for me to get into the NICU. The one that was in the area of my college did not take new nurses. So I did have to spend 2 years with adults, unfortunately. But you know what? I learned a lot, gained a lot of skills. And then after my 2-year mark, I applied to my regional NICU and got in. And, you know, there's no going back. I have no desire to go back to big people anytime soon.
So let's focus a little bit now then on what you find to be some of the more, and because there's plenty of challenges, right? But let's focus a little bit now on the rewarding aspects of what it's like to be a NICU nurse. You know, you are really in kind of the thick of it with families. These are not overnight stays generally, right? These are often environments where you form long-term relationships with patients. You know, sometimes these babies are there for months. And, you know, that creates, I'm sure, its own set of challenges. But what are some of the rewards personally that you have discovered in your role as a NICU nurse?
I think the relationship that we create with these families is one of the biggest rewards. And I'll always remember when I started out, I was doing night shift, and one of my patients' parents told me that they were so relieved when they saw me come on because they knew that their baby was going to be in good hands that night, and that made me feel like, you know, like I'm meant to do this, and I'm glad I could be that source of relief for someone, and that just felt really great.
Yeah, I think, Tia, I agree with that. I think for me personally, one of the most rewarding is actually being the advocate for the partners. Oftentimes in the NICU, we tend to see the partners first, you know, especially with our babies who come directly to us from, you know, labor and delivery or C-section and whatnot. And so our first typical interactions are usually with the partner. And I love being the person to kind of help, you know, almost like take them through this experience of meeting their child for the first time, right? And it's typically very unexpected, and helping them feel empowered and helping them feel very, you know, comfortable in a setting where typically this is not a comfortable feeling, right? Going into this setting where there's monitors and wires and beeping and all these things, and there's something really special about being able to be that person's, you know, kind of handhold them through that, and to be that, you know, cornerstone for them, you know, and then bonding with the moms later. I know, especially for me becoming a mom, I have a whole new perspective of it, of I can't even imagine, you know, not being able to see your baby right away and hold your baby right away. And so that empathy of being able to help them in the ways that you can, right? Okay, right now you can't hold because baby's medically unstable or we're unable to right now, but these are the things that we can do, you know, right? Finding those tangible things. And, helping them understand, okay, these are the vital signs. This is the range that I want to see. And if we're not in that range, then we're going to find the way to make that happen. Or like, these are the things that we're doing to ensure that your baby is getting to the healthiest state that they need to be in. So yeah, it is a very unique thing, and it's a very special bond that we get with our parents.
And I can imagine too, like the amount of fear that these parents come into the NICU with, right? They're vulnerable child, baby, critically ill, perhaps a micro preemie, but regardless of what the actual health challenges are, I mean, this is no doubt a period in time where these families are just riddled with fear and uncertainty and doubt. And I love, Tia, how you mentioned too that they were so relieved to see you come on the floor, right? That they are just looking for someone to help guide them, educate them, soothe them a little bit so that they can be a partner in their child's care and not just live in a constant state of fear and uncertainty. So, the two of you play, and all NICU nurses play such a vital role, not just with the actual physical care of the patient, but the emotional care of the family. I mean, I am sure that's probably just a very common understanding on your team, but for those who have never experienced life in the NICU, I mean, these families really need that emotional support as well as the physical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something too that Tia and I have talked a lot about, is even NICU post, you have PTSD post NICU, right? It's sort of this thing where I think most parents who go through it are in this place of fight or flight. And so it's almost like, it's hard to explain to someone unless, you're in it, but it's very much like a traumatic experience, if you will. And so during it, like Tia said, it's wonderful to be that person for the family member who, is helping guide them through that process. But yeah, it can be a very, very daunting, overwhelming thing. And it's a love-hate of, it's like you don't know how to really prepare someone for that, right? It's like, how would you even begin to prepare someone for that? And it's interesting because I think most NICU parents would agree that once you're a NICU parent, you're always a NICU parent, in the sense of you feel like you've overcome this battle and you become like a bigger, stronger, more empowered version of yourself, because you just learn in those moments like what the important things really are, right? It's like, in this moment and in this crazy world that we live in, nothing is more important than that tiny little person in that hospital bed. And I think parents, you just get this perspective on life in general, and it just gives you a whole new, fresh perspective. And I think that's a big thing for us as NICU nurses. Like, we get to see that daily, right? About how fragile life is, and also how strong our babies are. It's a beautiful thing to see as a NICU nurse.
Yeah, and just jumping off of what Tori said, it's astounding the rate of mental health issues that our parents face after they leave the NICU. And not many people think about it this way, but whether their baby has a 3-hour stay in the NICU or they're there for upwards of a year, like, they are still NICU parents, and they all have these things that they're going to have to deal with when they leave. And it's so important to mention that the NICU it's a community. Once you're in the NICU, like, it's like this big family for life, so all of our parents, all of our staff, other healthcare workers, part of the interdisciplinary teams, like, it's all very recognizable that it truly, it doesn't matter the time span that you're there with us. We're here to help you and support you. And I also think that's just a really special part of being in the NICU.
And I'm sure, Tia, right, this recognition of, kind of this shared experience that's very unique. No doubt that the two of you, or one of you, but at some point, you obviously recognized together that there was something missing, right? All great companies or programs or new offerings into the marketplace generally fill a void, right? Something's been missing. So, let's turn our focus a little bit to NICUity. I would love to know, before we kind of jump into actually what it is and what it does for the NICU community, how did you guys recognize that something was missing, and what led you to start collaborating together?
So I would say that in my experience, I've worked in probably roughly about 10 NICUs across the Southern California region, right? LA, Orange County areas. And something that I've seen, and especially as a nurse who started, over 10 years ago now, there's just seems to be a decline in the amount of resources put into education in general, right? And that seems to be something that we're seeing. I think COVID really was the turn of a lot of things for us in terms of healthcare, right? So a lot of things changed during that time. And I would argue, and I don't know, I'm sure Tia, we're obviously in the space together, but I think that the support for our new nurses just has been on a decline. And that seems to be universal, unfortunately. And so, when this all kind of came about, I think Tia and I have always been in the space of NICU education. And so I think that just felt very natural as a next step for us of how can we do something better? How can we help support our new upcoming nurses in a new way, right? And then also grow with our NICU nurses and healthcare providers.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Tori and I were also both on social media, it was very palpable that our newer nurses need help. And the fact that they're coming to social media to find the mentorship that they need, as much as we love to provide it for them, it indicates that this is missing. There's no classes in nursing school that cater to NICU. There's no education specifically for it. So we knew there was a gap already, but already knowing that we had this passion for educating and seeing that there was such a large need, it really kind of made it a simple jumping off point for us.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine the two of you, right, just bantering, having a conversation about, the gaps that exist in training and education, especially for the newer nurses. And you harnessed this, right? You took this brainchild and turned it into NICUity. So walk us through those early days from the time that you were, having these conversations and starting this collaboration to how you both developed what it could look like and the platform that this educational program could sit on. So tell us, tell the listeners a little bit about that methodology of the early days.
I literally love this story so much. Tia and I love this. Okay, so I think that our story with NICUity starts maybe how a lot of people reference their relationships, where everyone's like, we met on Hinge, we met online, right? Well, Tia and I met on social media, and that seems to be how a lot of founders are meeting nowadays, right? And Tia and I have known each other, been in this space now since 2000, I don't know, was it 17 or 18? We had been following each other and sort of doing our own things separately for years, and I was coming up to a point where there was this big push in me where I was like, I think the time is now. I had done a lot of, I started a blog and, done the social media. And I think I realized early on when the concept was there that, one, I was going to need a partner, and two, there was nobody else in the space that was as passionate and truly sweet and kind and wonderful and in the same, I think, space that I was than Tia. And so I reached out and we started talking, and I think that Tia, I feel like when we started this, it wasn't actually as big as it's become. I think that we just kind of started with what can we create that will help new nurses, and then from there it was like, oh, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, and then it started as, well, how do we start a business? How do we start an LLC? Where do we even start with that? And oh my gosh, we need to consider, it has grown and grown and grown. And, now we've been a company for just under a year, and I can't believe the impact we've had and the amazing community we've built. And yeah, I don't know. It's just been the most fun experience, I feel like, Tia. I don't know if I can speak to that for you too, but yeah.
Yeah, and I would definitely be remiss if I didn't mention that when Tori initially reached out to me about this, I didn't respond to her right away. I had, a little bit of imposter syndrome going on there, because I was thinking, like, who am I? This. Of course, I've been a nurse for 9 years at that point in the NICU, 11 overall. I had my master's in nursing education. I've been on social media educating that way, but still in my mind, I was thinking, I am not the girl who does these things. Like, what do you mean? And, I slept on it, and then I woke up the next day and I thought to myself, why not me? So, that's just a little note for anyone who's listening right now too, who has any of these big aspirations or like sees this need that's out there. Like, why not you? You can do this. And then I responded to Tori, and it really took off from there. But I also want to give Tori a lot of credit too, because she has always had like these huge goals when it comes to NICUity, and she really manifests them for us, it seems, because we just keep hitting them, and it's been such a wild ride. But the two of us together, it's we're really unstoppable, as it seems.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Well, I will third that because I'll tell you, you're absolutely born to do this. Why not you, Tia? And I'm going to share a little something with you and our listeners as a little side note that's a pretty fun factoid. So, you just mentioned you have your nursing degree and nursing education. And I think that both of you are absolutely born educators. And the point I want to make is before we even got on this podcast together, I mean, I'm on TikTok. I love to look at TikTok, and you came up, Tia, on my For You page several weeks ago, before we even had planned this podcast. And your viral video was shown to me, and I know which one what I'm referring to, the one that you could teach a master class in terms of setting boundaries with more challenging patients. And for anybody that has not seen this video, certainly go on Tia's TikTok, which is if I'm not mistaken, it's That Nurse Tia. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And it's a video where you demonstrate how you handled a difficult patient. It was a mother who was unplugging her daughter from the monitor. And it truly is a masterclass in boundary setting, good, thorough communication, and expectation setting. So I know that video went viral. It was terrific. It came up on my For You page. And then when I realized that you were one and the same person for today's podcast, I couldn't wait to tell you about that because it was an extraordinary video. So well done. So let's talk a little bit about social media, because you mentioned that this is really a vehicle now for a lot of younger people and younger professionals who need information. They need access to resources and support. So what is it about, using social media as a vehicle that you think has been so effective, not only in your own channels and communication, but also with starting NICUity?
I think social media in itself is kind of a double-edged sword, because as much as it can be used for, sometimes you'll see like misinformation out there. I feel that as healthcare providers, we kind of have this, we are called to educate and get the good information out there. And that's always how I viewed social media, through a really positive lens. And the way that we're able to do that, sometimes it happens through humor, sometimes it happens with really quick educational videos where we'll use like a baby doll to demonstrate something or something like that. And then yes, you'll always have the members of your community that's are in your DMs and asking you questions about what's your protocol at your hospital, how do you guys do this, and just a great way to really share all of these different things that we do and circulate them. And with NICUity, we kind of took all of that and put it into this idea that we would have this forum for the members of our community so that we could have these discussions and easily compare and contrast what we do at our hospitals. What is the best evidence-based practice? How can we better our care at our hospital based on what a different hospital is doing, like 600 miles away? So social media in that respect has been really great for our community.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think also something that we're talking a lot about in the nurse community is how nurses are really honestly leaving the bedside in droves for many reasons. Much of it relying around improper staffing ratios. Some states it's lack of pay. Some states, it's lack of breaks. It's just, there's not a lot of standardization in nursing in general. And so there's a lot of amazing talks going on in social media, which I think is wonderful. And from our perspective in terms of education, what's interesting is I feel this new generation coming up really do enjoy seeing and learning from people online. There's something about it where if you see someone, living that life and doing the thing and providing the education, it's really well received. To the point of I've had, we're at the point in our career where a lot of our friends are becoming the educators, the managers and whatnot. And Tia is stepping into management, and I get to hear a lot from educators and management about how it's hard to keep people really engaged, right? But it's interesting because if Tia and I share something like, hey, we're going to this conference, or hey, there's this really great online resource, here's a webinar, the amount of people that find interest in it because we're sharing it it's really profound and really amazing. And I think it's also something where we're reaching our audience in a modern way. A lot of medical education, I would say, is kind of old school, right? In the way of it's behind paid journals and it's hard to access, and it's not really, touching the newer generation in a way that feels modern and fresh and like it's representative of who they are and also the care that they're giving, because a lot of things have changed for us in healthcare very quickly. It's, the demographics have changed, the equipment, the education, the things that we're seeing, right? And the things that we're quickly diagnosing, and how our patients are more and more complex. And so I think it's just been a really, really wonderful thing to build this little NICUity baby where we're reaching our audience and able to educate in a new, fresh, modern way. Yeah, it's been really great.
I loved, when I was on your website, just looking at, your shop and your resources. I mean, even that color-coded, very simple approach to how to handle very specific situations in the form of like the little booklet, right? And, booklet's probably not the right description because that sounds like it's text heavy and overwhelming, but it's like a little flip card, right? Device that was just so, talk about fresh and new and very interesting and engaging. I'd love to see that. And I'm sure it's been a very successful product for you.
That it's actually funny that you bring that up because I'm pretty sure you're speaking about it's our booklet companion, and that was actually created as a request from when we were creating our cards. If those are our bedside badge cards, quite a few of my colleagues had said, hey, like, we would love this, but can you put this in a book form so we can just have it? And I was like, of course. So, that's the beauty of being a company where we are at, is we can move very quickly, from direct to consumer. When we hear things from people, we can really move as quick as we possibly can as a small business. And so that's been really nice, to be able to really hear what people are liking. And where do they want to learn? How do they want to learn? What topics? How can we deliver that information to them most effectively? And also, it's in terms of Tia and I love to collaborate with people who are even smarter than ourselves. So we brought on Dr. Prem, our neonatologist, to teach on ventilators. We have CNSs and other nurses who have specialty areas to come and educate there. So there's a lot of very deliberate thinking when we're developing our products and we're developing the company, where we know that, we don't know everything, right? And, we want to kind of become the hub and support that. So yeah, it's been fun to really grow those products, and also to make them fun to look at and engage with, and make it fresh.
Learning should be fun, right? I mean,
yes, exactly.
That's what any great teacher will tell you. Learning should be fun. And
yes,
I think that you're doing it in a very fun, engaging way, both through social media and, the website and your products on the website. And I mean, I have to ask, because obviously I follow you in social media, and, not only did you birth NICUity, but you also recently became a new mom, right? So now you're a nurse. You're a mom, you're a business owner, and how does motherhood, and obviously it's hard to juggle all of that, right? You've got to find a way to continue to fuel your passion. What advice as a new mom do you have to other moms who are inspired to, who might be inspired to follow their dreams and found their own company, build their own, baby, as it were? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. It's such an interesting thing. I very early on, with NICUity, it felt that I knew I needed an amazing partner. I feel very lucky to have Tia as a partner in this, because she is truly good and amazing and so much better at the things that I am not, right? Like, I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And so in terms of business itself, I feel very fortunate for that, to have a partner like that. And then in terms of at home with my personal, I still very, very fortunate for my husband. He has been an amazing partner through this. I could not do this without him. I mean, we are, pushing the boulder up together, and I feel thankful for that. He'll, take our daughter when I need a minute, or, and I think becoming a mom in general is very humbling, right? It's like, even though I've been working with babies for 10 years, there are moments where I'm like, oh my God, this is what everybody means when they say they are about to lose their mind. Like, I literally totally feel that 100%. The other thing what's interesting is, I think, in my personal experience, we were thrown some really interesting things in the beginning that I've shared on social, with an unexpected diagnosis with Sloan, and what that journey was like very early on as a fresh postpartum mom. And I think it gave me a lot of humbling experience and just a little bit of relatability to what it feels like to feel very hopeless or helpless, and to have to pull it together because it's the right thing for your child, and to push and advocate for your child in a healthcare system that can be very hard to navigate. I think as a business owner too, it's also a little bit of, I gave myself a lot of room and grace in the beginning. The first couple months, Tia was wonderful and would pick up for me where I couldn't do it, and I was okay being a mom and being like, what, I need to just focus on this right now, because I physically can't with my brain concentrate on more than one thing. Fast forward to where I am today, it's a lot of, I'd say, just extra planning ahead, right? And knowing the things that I need help with and expressing that. And it's a little bit of this weird thing where I think everyone thinks you can have it all. And I disagree with that a little bit. I think you can have it all, but not all at the same time, right? I very much valued being a mom early on and not having to have the stressors of business right in my face every day. Now, fast forward five months from now, we're in a phase of planning our next things for NICUity, and I have a lot more brain capacity for that. But I think I was okay being a new mom and just saying, I need time. I need to not pressure myself to push. Did it affect us? A little bit, right? Of course. But I don't regret having that time with my daughter and having those days and being okay. You know, maybe that's even a message to a lot of my NICU moms, right? It's like, it's okay to shut out the world and just enjoy and try and like have those moments and just have whatever you need it is, right? Like if you need to not have contact with other people and just focus on your child and just kind of go into your little cocoon and do your thing. I am a big advocate for that. And then now I'm feeling really good, and you know, I'm at a place where I'm really excited to be, you know, in the next stages of NICUity planning. And, you know, that's what I'm good at, is kind of thinking ahead and starting to do things and plan and, you know, the courses and reach outs and whatnot. And so, yeah, it's an interesting thing becoming a new mom and a business owner and kind of learning the ebbs and flows of it. Yeah, it's been really fun and a whole new side of myself that I didn't know I had.
And you're right about, you know, being able to just, whether it's hit the pause button or slow it down in the moment to take care of what's needed. I think a lot of people, you're absolutely right. You can't have it all, all at the same time. Or you can have maybe just a little bit of things and not all at once. And there's this great saying that I love that is, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And if you can take it slowly and do it right and do it in a measured way, it becomes smooth. And when you do things smoothly, they end up moving fast, right? And it does prevent burnout, and it does prevent mistakes being made. And, you know, speaking of burnout, you know, we, and nurses know this better than anyone, this concept of compassion fatigue, right? And Conceivabilities in particular has been really focused on empowering nurses through a challenge that addresses compassion fatigue. And, you know, both of you have been champions of this challenge. And so, how about Tia? How can talking about the challenges of being a nurse and addressing compassion fatigue help to perhaps mitigate it out in the workplace? Like just acknowledging it and talking about it, but let's talk about a little bit of compassion fatigue, what it means for you, and how nurses can address it head on and help to mitigate it.
When I think about things like compassion fatigue, I always think about when I was back in nursing school and there was this really big push for nurses to be very stoic, to not really show emotion, and to not really let it look like anything was bothering you. And that's just so, it's not normal, and it's not attainable to be able to be a robot like that. Nurses, the things that we see in our career are things that normal people may never ever witness in their lives. Like we see some of the worst things, and we're expected to carry that with us. And it really, really takes an effect. And I think before really like social media and being able to like talk to other people at other places, you know, mental health carried such a big stigma. And for those of us in healthcare, it almost felt even worse, because there was always this idea that you didn't want a nurse that was in healthcare that was experiencing these feelings taking care of you, but not the understanding that nurses are also human too. So when it comes to things like compassion fatigue, I'm a huge advocate for, one, being able to advocate for yourself and what you need. A lot of times that looks like boundaries, putting your phone on do not disturb on your days off, not going in for extra shifts because you feel guilted to do so. Things like taking time for yourself and enjoying it and not feeling guilty about it. And then Tori and I have talked about this before as well. But there's this notion that the things that we see that are terrible really stick with us. And trying to kind of flip that mindset into we also have the power to do really positive things in these situations, and just really feeling empowered by that ability that we have in our own hands as nurses. Because compassion fatigue, if left unchecked, is a one-way road to burnout, which no nurse ever sees themselves, having after they get into this career that they're so passionate about and wanting to help people. So that is definitely something that Tori and I in NICUity are very talkative about. And I know Tori had her own journey with burnout herself as well that she might want to speak a little to. So
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Tia, too, is I think something that we have both been big advocates for is, really addressing it head on. I think for me, I've hit several different stages of burnout in my career. Early on, I would say about 3.5 years in, I was at a wonderful hospital, teaching hospital, and I had just hit this moment of, I was questionably, should I leave bedside? I had taken on too much. I had done, name it. I was a part of several committees and helping to push a lot of things forward on the unit and doing extra things and a lot of extra time towards something that I love so much. And I think what we forget as NICU nurses, and actually just as nurses in general, is there's only so much we can control, right? There's only so many things in our immediate control. And so I think when I hit that burnout, the first thing I felt very empowered by was, being able to make a decision to go, travel nurse and to try new things, meet new people, see new things, understand new ways of doing things, maybe seeing a new hospital. It was just fresh and fun for me. And also, I think another thing is just feeling this sense of, I am going to make the best possible experience for my patient and my parent in the moment, right? I cannot control outcomes. I cannot control how someone's exactly feeling, but I can get them a warm blanket. I can help their experience a little bit more. I can sit next to them and hear them and what their fears are. I can explain what's going on in this moment. And yes, it may be scary, but we are doing everything we can in this moment, and we're going to make this, the best experience we can. Also, just trying to meet people where they're at. I think with a lot of times in healthcare, you'll probably have gathered by now, Tia is the warm and cozy and lovely, and I tend to take a little bit more of the, lighthearted, okay, well, she's being a little sassy today, so we got to pick this up. She needs to start eating, to have a little bit, meet partners, maybe if they're in a different space, kind of bring them out of that space, right? Bring them into, okay, well, this is where we're at now, but these are the goals we have, and we're going to obtain them, and I'm going to show you how we're going to obtain them. And I think for me, a lot of it in terms of burnout and nursing in general, it's a big piece of what we do. And I love to empower people to, go back to school. Maybe you need to change a role. Maybe you need to become a charge nurse. Maybe you need to go travel. Maybe you need to become an educator. Maybe you need to start your own business. It's just, I think it's a little bit of shifting, and we're talking about that more as nurses nowadays. And I'm proud of us for that, because I think nursing is very different than it was even 10 years ago, right? Most people will say 30 years ago, but I think even 10 years ago, nursing was a little different. And so, I think it's a really fun time for nurses in the sense of there's a lot of opportunity out there, and there's so many new ways to affect people in a positive way.
Right. I mean, there's, it's being the helper. There are so many ways to help. And nursing is such an incredible vehicle to help others. But it's not without its challenges, as both of you have clearly articulated during the course of this podcast today. I mean, there's some real challenges that you face in the nursing field. And how, as you're continuing to build NICUity, how do both of you manage to balance both your work as a nurse and running, NICUity, and what keeps you motivated to continue to do both?
Well, I'll be the first to recognize that Tori and I aren't an island as well. We do have two other people that do work with us to help us run NICUity, so that is actually very helpful. But for me, myself, I work my full-time job 36 hours a week outside, and then I have NICUity, and then whatever obligations I have to my that nurse Tia social media as well. But for me, the thing that keeps me, rejuvenated and going with all of it is that I always look at it as something that I get to do, like I'm really lucky to be able to do this, and I find it fun and I find it exciting, and the idea that it's helping people is something that keeps me going. But we do, all have those days where it's a little bit harder than others, and that is when I really do lean on Tori. I lean on my husband, and the community that we've created kind of helps on those days.
Yeah, I would agree with Tia. I think there's days with it where both Tia and I, especially when we're in phases of the business where it's, like we're learning all of this on the fly, right? We're not trained in business, and there's a lot of things with business that you have to put on your big girl panties and you have to learn, and we have to figure it out. And it can be an arduous process, and figuring out, okay, we need a lawyer for this, and we need to get an accountant for this, and we have to do sales tax. Like, there's a lot of things on the back end that we have both been like, oh my gosh, so overwhelmed by. And then there's points where we're creating things and we're so deep in it and we are like, why are we doing this? And then we'll get the sweetest, kindest, most genuine message from someone that day and tell us how thankful they are that this was a resource, and that, they're just so thankful for it. And, truly, when I say that, like, those are the things that we live for. We live for those moments. It has been the feedback of our community and the nurses, and also our Ts. And, because a lot of the things, while we do focus majority, I would say, on in terms of education is nursing, but we're also, a lot of our resources are also dedicated to our RTs and, other NICU providers. It's just so amazing to hear their feedback. And then I will say, on the day-to-day, Tia had mentioned, we have an operations manager at this point, Abby, who runs our day-to-day, and Gabe, who is our lovely comic relief. He is our Gen Z, beautiful, amazing, hilarious male nurse. We love him.
He's pretty funny. I've seen him on social media too.
Yes, he is so funny. He's literally what we need. Yeah, it's just this beautiful team that we've built, and truly, I agree with Tia. It feels, we're so lucky that it's something that we look forward to. I look forward to creating for NICUity, and we were very intentional early on about how we built the company. We sort of took a risk on ourselves. We're the ones to invest in it. We were the ones to really put in the hours. We have really bootstrapped this company. This company was really built on a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and in good ways. But it's been amazing, and at the same time, it's like it was a passion project that has turned into so much more than that. It's turned into this amazing business, and hopefully a lasting legacy, or a brand that in the NICU world has a good reputation and well known, and is supporting people in the way that it should be. So
I am so excited for the future for you guys. Are there any exciting plans or goals for the company that you can share with us?
Yeah, Tia and I, we are in the process currently of doing our round 2 of course development. So that's been really, really, really exciting. So that's coming up this year. And then we are constantly in the state of creative flow of trying to find our new things. So we are always looking to expand our products. So that's something we're focusing on as well. And finding new fun merch pieces. Like, that has been a really fun thing in terms of design and ways to really kind of, have fun with the brand, if you will. But yeah, we're in the thick of it with our next course planning. Tia and I that's been our new thing that's coming up. I can't think of anything else.
I love your merch, by the way. Your merch is so funny.
Thank you.
And when I saw it, I just thought, again, to the belly laughs that I had, whether it was, your social media posts or even the merch, it was just such a cheeky way to bring a little bit of humor into what can be, again, a scary time for families and patients, right? I think that we could all use some comic relief from time to time, and I think you guys just hit the right note with that.
Thank you. That's something I think Tia and I really do appreciate that, because the comic relief is really oftentimes what we need. And, I think in the NICU world, there is a lot of seriousness and there's a lot of, moments, but it's fun to get fun with it. And, so we really appreciate that. It's been fun.
Well, I appreciate both of you coming on this show today and sharing a bit about your lives with us, about your profession, about NICUity, and the good work that you're doing out in the space. I love this concept of empowered women helping to empower other women through education. And for those listeners that would like to gain a little bit more insight into the good work that these women are doing, please visit NICUity.com. That's NICUity.com. And if you're a user of TikTok, you can go on at That Nurse Tia or at That Nurse Tia and Instagram. And for Tori's handle, it is nurse.tori. A lot of good information there. So Tori and Tia, thank you both so much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks so much for having us.
What a great podcast with those two ladies. And, what I'm reminded of time and again when I encounter educators, and particularly founders who are educators through their platform or product, it's because they are intuitive helpers. And, I can't remember if it's Fred Rogers or somebody that said, always look for the helpers. And it's so true. In our lives, when we find those who try to help through support, education, empowerment, it's always a win-win situation. And these ladies are no different through their platform of NICUity, looking to help empower and educate a new generation of nurses who are supporting the most vulnerable of patients and their families. So for those listeners out there today, please always look for the helpers. They'll always guide the way. And until next time, take good care.
At Conceivabilities, we believe that everyone who wants to become a parent can. Our agency has helped build thousands of families for nearly 25 years. Whether you are an intended parent ready to fulfill your family destiny, a surrogate answering your calling, or an egg donor wanting to expand what's possible in your life, we are your people. See how matching matters. Learn more by joining our Surrogacy Learning Center community at surrogacylearningcenter.conceivabilities.com.